Boy, we can't figure this YouTube thing out. I swear. All right, guys. Well, welcome to Talking Rife podcast, episode 6. So I thought today, and I didn't get a chance to send out advertisements or flyers today. It just happens that way. We're getting incredibly busy. You guys can probably see in the background. I've been building Rife machines today. We got a big event coming up. It is a charity fundraiser for veterans in Fairhope, Alabama. Electromedics is going to have a booth there. So we're going to be set up with Rife machines and talking about Rife machines and letting people use Rife machines. And we're bringing in a bunch of veterans that'll get to try out Rife machines and different things like that. They're also doing a big fundraiser to where, we help take the families of military families that lost a spouse or parent to the military, or, if you're coming back veteran military and you're disabled, like we do big hunting trips, fishing trips, different things like that. Honor Tribe Outdoors is the non-profit organization that is holding the charity event. And there's a few others that are donating and participating and everything else here in Fairhope, Alabama. It's also going to be in parts of Orange Beach, Alabama, where we take some of the guys inshore fishing, offshore fishing, and everything else. So really excited to be a part of that. Really excited for Electromedics to get to be set up at the event this year. We're going to have a real nice booth there with a bunch of Rife machines, and really encourage and talk to people about using Rife machines. Using Rife machines instead of medicine and pharmaceuticals and other things that have horrible side effects when you don't need it. You can do a little bit of self-healing, whether it's a frequency device, a little bit of exercise and dieting, different things like that. So very excited about that. That is Saturday. So I've been building Rife machines, just getting all the gear and different things like that together, hats, t-shirts, you name it, working with Honor Tribe Outdoors and some of the different locations that we're going to be set up and where we're going to do the boat. I'm actually going to be one of the boat captains that takes some of the veterans inshore fishing, some of the families of the veterans inshore fishing, different things like that. Hey, Bella. Hey, Bella. I know, you want to be on the show. So really cool, really exciting. But anyways, yeah, so I didn't get a chance to put out a little advertisement today, but I just expect that a lot of people who care to watch the podcast or follow the podcast or anything like that, you guys are generally going to know that most days I'm going to go live daily at 8 p.m. That's Central Time for everybody that is in those different time zones and different parts of the world, across the pond, everything else. So tonight, in light of the Charlie Kirk situation and the response to the Charlie Kirk situation from the left and the right, right? Because we've had some extreme things said on the right and obviously a lot of extreme things said on the left. But instead of diving too deep into that, again, I thought what we should talk about is one of the main things that everybody is afraid of or everybody is pushing from the Charlie Kirk assassination. That was undoubtedly carried out by intelligence communities, most likely Israeli and Mossad intelligence communities. A day after days after he openly calls for the Epstein files to be released and made it his public stance that he thought they should be released, he gets assassinated. This came just weeks after he told a friend, and this was like an official statement from somebody close to him, was that he wanted to be openly against some of the things that the Trump administration was doing with Israel. But he was worried or scared about the consequences that would happen. So a lot of interesting facts when it comes to that. The whole Epstein thing is, we're going to have to do a whole episode about the Epstein thing. I mean, the first go around when Epstein was arrested and then he was suicided in his jail cell, and just the whole way the first Trump administration handled it to how it's being handled now is just, I mean, it's you can't make it up. Like, it's beyond, like, fact is stranger than fiction. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's absolutely disgusting to think about how many elite, powerful politicians, elite financial people, bankers, and celebrities had ties to someone like Epstein. It's just, but anyways, we'll definitely get into that episode. We'll do an Epstein episode. That would be a really good conspiracy rabbit hole to dive down, because it does get pretty dark. You know, I don't want to go super dark on the podcast, but it is important to be truthful. You know, and I don't like just stopping at the shallow end of truth, you know, where everybody can bear it. I like to go ahead and get waist deep, neck deep, where it gets uncomfortable, because it is the truth. And I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said, no matter how inconvenient, ugly, or uncomfortable a truth may be, I never wish it unknown to the world. Because it is in truth that you find peace. It is in truth that you find progression. It is in truth that you find understanding. It is in truth that you find safety. That can line up with current events real magically. In truth, you find safety. If Erna had lived in truth, that's the 23-year-old Ukrainian woman that was stabbed to death on a public transport system in Charlotte, North Carolina. She would have never been on that train, that public transport system in the first place. Alone, defenseless, unarmed, untrained. If Charlie Kirk had lived in truth, he would have known that intelligence agencies were most likely coming for him. Not that it was Charlie Kirk's fault. The amount of propaganda that is put in front of us, the amount of lies that are put in front of us. Obviously, he believed that he was in a safe place to walk out on that stage that day. Because if he had all the truth, if everybody around him had been truthful with him, he would have known not to walk out on that stage. It's like if Erna had people be truthful to her, like her father and other people, prominent figures in her life have been truthful to her, she probably would have never thought it was okay for a 90-pound, 23-year-old girl to be on a public transport system downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. The safety in truth is responsibility in truth. But it comes with a burden. The burden of knowing the truth is a very heavy chip on your shoulder. Baggage to carry with you through life. It's where the phrase comes from, things you can't unsee. You got to carry that with you through life. And you talk about a lot of law enforcement officers or military, special forces, things like that, that come home and they're all fucked up. They got PTSD and everything else, mental trauma. It's because of the stuff they had to see, the stuff they went through, the stuff they heard about, the stuff they know is true. They're like, I mean, it's just, they have to carry that with them for life. There's no forgetting it. No amount of alcohol is going to make you forget that. No amount of physical or substance abuse will make you forget that. No amount of happy memories will make you forget that darkness of the world. And so you carry it. And the only way to overcome really dark truths and carry that responsibility is to make room for it in your life. A great example of that is like if you lose someone close to you. If you've ever lost a family member or a loved one, you know it's like you never heal from that. You just make room for it. There's a piece of you that has suddenly been taken, and you can never get it back through no amount of work, hard work, responsibility, abuse. Nothing you can do ever gets that part of you back. That's how it is when you kind of live with the responsibility of truths. Some of them are dark. They're very hard to swallow. Some of them can cause even the strongest men to have some very depressing lives, dark times, and mental trauma. But that's why I think it's important to go the step further to talk about the things that are uncomfortable to talk about. Because if you're only talking about the things that are easy to talk about, it's easy to become numb to life. I think I saw a post today where someone was using the photograph. It was right after Erna had been stabbed. The 23-year-old Ukrainian woman had been stabbed in the neck. That was before she started bleeding everything out that, and then you see the tear on their face, and they were trying to make a point. I don't remember what the point was, but what I did see was a comment, and it was by some girl who was just like, can we please stop using this poor girl's photo for memes or whatever she said. And it was like at that moment, I was just like, I realized, it's like you are using the tragedy of this young girl to push people to tiptoe around your insecurities because you don't want to look at her face. You don't want to remember. You want to go on to the next thing, happy hour, steak dinners, movies, whatever it is. Messaging 60 dudes in your Snapchat, whatever it is. You can't stand to look at it anymore. You want to forget the truth of your reality. And I think that picture should be posted everywhere. Not pretty pictures of her when she was all done up in Instagram and everything else and looked pretty and paint murals everywhere over the city. I think we need to post the one of her shocking face when a giant man that was 3 times her size just stabbed her in the neck for no reason. That's what should be painted across cities. That way, every time you get out of your car, every time you go to the grocery store, every time you walk, you have to face the reality of your society and your community. Because that's facing your day-to-day life and the outcome that it has had on young ones, on education, on children, on safety, on public transport. We're all guilty of it. But we want to forget about it. So we want people to quit posting pictures of Charlie getting killed, pictures of Erna getting killed, their faces in the moment that they knew they were dying, and their families crying and everything else. Everybody wants to quit posting it, and everybody wants to forget about it because we want to move on to the next thing. Oh, I'm just trying to enjoy Call of Duty and provide for my family and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, what community are you leaving for your family? Because what you want is you want to forget the truth. You don't want to hold the responsibility of truth. And the truth is our everyday lives and the lack of involvement in our community, in our politics, is a direct result of Erna and Charlie Kirk. Everybody's so worried about, well, I got to go to work. For what? Well, I got kids, I got to put them through college. Well, look at the colleges that you're saving up for. See, you forgot to take care of the college. All you cared about was making the money and taking care of the kid. You forgot to take care of the world that you were sending them to. What good is all the money that you're saving if all it buys them is poisonous food, education that teaches you to shoot people for difference of opinion, hospitals that get you addicted to pharmaceuticals that you can't get off? Burning down the ecosystem for almond milk farms, solar farms, and everything else. It's going to be real good. All the money that you're saving for your child is going to be great because they'll be able to buy oxygen tanks because our air won't be breathable anymore.
You got to remember, it takes responsibility all around. You got to take care of the community. You got to take care of the food. You got to take care of the water. You got to take care of the schools, the colleges, politics, including law enforcement, city councilmen, judges. It don't matter. There's not enough money in the world that could buy your kid that once that is gone. You got to be able to live with the weight, the burden of the truth. And I think everybody should be wearing the burden of what happened to Erna and what a disgrace that is to our country, of how we are supposed to be one of the most sophisticated, multicultural, safest countries in the entire world. We like to call ourselves the greatest country in the world. We like to call ourselves the most developed in the world. 23-year-old women can't ride public transport without fearing for their lives or having their lives taken. You have to wear that responsibility. Your cities and your communities are in shambles like that for a reason. And turning a blind eye to it, not thinking about it, and just worrying about your own household is exactly how it got there. We have a responsibility to be neighbors. We have a responsibilities to go to parent-teacher conferences, city council meetings, to go to the events that our law enforcement and our firefighters create. Because it's only in that involvement that they represent the people. But nobody does that anymore. And the few who do, they're overtaken. Because the majority of us will come home, pretend we're tired, cook our food, do our workout routine, play Call of Duty, Xbox, or get on Netflix. Or sit there and doom scroll Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And the reality of those results are exactly what we're seeing unfold. All right, so I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to shift gears. Gun control is what I thought would be a very unique thing to talk about in the light of the Charlie Kirk assassination. Because that is what everybody is pushing for, despite the fact that that kid did not make that shot. 3.6 MOA rifle did not make that shot. And you got people saying all kinds of ludicrous things and dip one way to the other. And everybody's just like, oh yeah, that's definitely the assassin. It's like, it's definitely not. You just don't know anything about shooting long range. I'm not saying that it's a professional shot, but to get to that point, to make a 200-yard shot, there's work, real work. Not like, going and standing at a cash register at Burger King or sitting there riding the clock at your IT job, pretending to be useful when you did an hour and a half of work and rode the clock for the other 6.5 hours. That's not what I'm talking about. There's real education and very, very precise formulas to get a rifle to shoot 200 yards, especially at 1 MOA or sub-MOA, which is generally going to be the standard for making a 200-yard shot. Anyways, moving on to the gun control debate. I would like to start with the Second Amendment. I don't have it right here in front of me, word for word. I meant to put that down. It's the right to bear arms. It states. A well-trained and armed militia being necessary to a free state, comma, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I believe that was it, word for word, and I might have left a little something out, but it's okay. That is almost what it says. So I want to point out, when it comes to the Second Amendment and the way it's written in the Bill of Rights. For those of you that don't know, the Bill of Rights is its own document. So there was the Declaration of Independence, which was declaring the 13 colonies an independent state from King George III. Okay, and then there was the Constitution. That's a separate document. You got Declaration of Independence, declaring independence from King George III. Then you have the Constitution, and that was the laws and guidelines of how the government was to be set up in their free state of their 13 colonies, and the restrictions and the powers, blah, blah, blah. And then there was the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights it's the third separate document. Those are three founding documents. A lot of people like to get them confused and call everything one or whatever. The Bill of Rights originally had 9 rights on it. I'm not going to go into all 9. Obviously, most people know the first 2 and the 4th very well. The main one we're going to focus on today is the second, the way it was written. The Bill of Rights did not grant you the right to bear arms. It restricted the government's power from being able to infringe upon your arms. That's it. There's no right granted. It's literally worded as in it bars government from making any laws that infringe upon the Second Amendment. And they do not teach it that way for a reason. Your rights are natural rights. Habeas corpus. They're not granted by a piece of paper. The piece of paper was there to act as a barrier. Let's say a speed bump. Because the founding fathers knew that there was nothing they could ever put in place that would actually stop government from continuing to want power and money, power and money, power and money. It's 100% done under the guise of safety and security. I believe that was why Benjamin Franklin said, how exactly did it go? Those who prefer safety and security over liberty and freedom will have neither, or no, how'd it go? Yeah, will have neither or lose both. Something like that. I butchered it, but that's generally what he was saying. So when they were setting up the documents, they were just thinking, how many layers of speed bumps and barriers can we put in place that it would take a government so long to actually be able to be dangerous upon itself or destructive upon itself and to its people. And the reason, the First Amendment, the very first one, is restricting the government, again, not granting you a right. There's no rights granted by government. It doesn't work that way. There's no rights granted by the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. They are documents restricting what the government can impose or infringe upon those rights. That's why the first one was the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and the freedom of press. It's because truth, the responsibility of truth was to be burdened on every American, which means You had the right to freedom to express your religion, and anybody could talk about any religion freely. You had the right to talk about anything you wanted freely. And other people had the right to report on it, to record you, to relay the message, to write about it. And all of that was doing, that first right on the Bill of Rights, that is restricting the government from ever being able to say things like what Pam Bondi said today. Like, we're going to come after you if you said any hate speech towards Charlie Kirk. I sympathize with Charlie Kirk. I think what Charlie Kirk was doing was very good. I think he was a very respectable guy doing something that not almost anybody has the courage to do. Do I agree with all of his politics? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I bet me and him would be great friends, and we would sit there and debate the difference of our opinion on politics over a beer like 7 days a week, and would have a good time and enjoy each other's company. But we would not agree on everything. But what he did, almost nobody has the courage to go do. What he did was extremely respectable. And Pam Bondi wants to come out and say that if you criticize Charlie Kirk and we deem it hate speech, who's the hate speech standard person? Who's the person who deems it hate speech? See, that's granting yourself godlike power. Of I'm suddenly God and I'll determine what hate speech is. And I'm not saying that it's classy or respectable to go out and cheer for Charlie Kirk's death or say this or say that. I'm not at all. And as a matter of fact, if you are going out saying those things and you are having consequences like family members not wanting to be associated with you, employers not wanting to be associated with you, social media followings, you name it, good. That is the punishment for unclassy behavior, disrespectful behavior. It's very rare in this country today, but guess what? Being disrespectful, being unclassy, generally has consequences. And a lot of people, mostly women, are finding that out right now. They're like, oh wow, you mean I said something that was super distasteful and now suddenly people don't like me? And my employer doesn't want to be associated with me? How weird. Yeah, how weird. How weird is it that there's consequences for things you say? That's the difference between being a girl and a guy. Being a girl, walk into a bar, say whatever you want to anybody in there. Generally, nothing's going to happen to you. Now be a guy, walk into a bar. Walk up to a dude and be like, you look fat. See if he doesn't punch you in the mouth. Men have to live with accountability of what they say. Generally. I know it's certainly a disappearing fact of our lives in America for young men. I grew up knowing that. So I walked around, I was respectful to people no matter where I went. No matter what walk of life they were, no matter where we were, no matter how much we had to drink. I was respectable, tried to remain respectable, speak respectable, and remain classy. Because I knew that being unclassy and being disrespectful had consequences. Now, does that mean that I think the federal government should be able to come in there and use force on your life and destroy your life, your finances, your career, your reputation, your legal status? When I say legal status, it's a lot like having a driver's license. Like when you start getting felonies and misdemeanors and things like that, life gets a lot tougher. Just like when you get a lot of speeding tickets. They take away your license. It gets a lot harder to drive and transport yourself around and get jobs. Well, it's the same thing when the government likes to use their force and put a little mark on your record. Misdemeanors and felonies have a lot of consequences. Years and years and decades into the future, sometimes for the rest of your life. Felonies carry consequences for the rest of your life. Completely unconstitutional, There was nowhere in the Constitution, Bill of Rights, or anywhere that said government had the right to take away your rights because you committed a crime. And I'll give you an example of the ludicrousness of that. If you destroy a mailbox, a lot of kids do it. A lot of kids did it in the 90s, 80s, I mean, way back. It's gotten less and less now, but it was very common. You destroy a mailbox. That is a felony offense. When you are charged with a felony, you are no longer allowed to vote. You are no longer allowed to own guns. Those are two of some of your most important rights. And it's not just after you serve your time. It's not when you get out of jail. It's for life. You have a lifetime ban of those two rights now. Not to mention how hard it is to get a job. Most felons cannot go get a respectable job. Most felons end up being a roughneck, working on oil rigs, shipping boats, like 100 ton, 200 ton, 500 ton plus. Yeah, like big shipping boats that stay out at sea 6 months at a time. Because it's the only thing they can do to actually make a living. And some of those guys out there, it was as simple as catching a felony for something as stupid as destroying a mailbox, backing into a mailbox, getting in a bar fight. How many men have grown up and never been in a bar fight? Well, guess what? It's real easy to catch felony assault charges. All you got to do is get in a fight with the wrong person. And it doesn't matter if it was self-defense. Our laws state there's no self-defense in a bar fight. So generally, what does that mean? It means you can be charged with assault. And with the wrong person, you can be charged with felony assault. All they got to do is know law enforcement, know a lawyer, know someone sitting on city council or judge magistrate or a judge or just any elected official. And guess what? They go out to bars all the time. And not only do they go out to bars, they like to go out to bars with the idea that they're above the law. And they tend to be very disrespectful and start shit with people. Great example of that is the mayor of Orange Beach, who got away with domestic violence because the cops did not want to arrest him or investigate when multiple people called the cops for a domestic violence situation in a public building that was supposed to be closed. And now finally a lawyer is actually filing lawsuits and FOIA requests to get the body camera footage from that night. It has gone to federal court. And I see that mayor with his wife out all the time, getting drunk, feeding shots to very young couples, and being overly aggressive and sexual, using the Orange Beach PD as a taxi service. Needless to say, it is very easy to be disrespected or to be in confrontation with someone like that. You make a bad decision, that is a felony assault. So I've digressed a little bit. Let's go back to the Second Amendment. All right, Second Amendment does not grant rights. It only restricts the government from infringing upon that right. That is how it's written. That's what those documents are for. It outlines what the government is allowed and not allowed to do. Although the government today will tell you that the Second Amendment is a right. The Second Amendment is not a right. The Second Amendment is, again, just a rule in a document, in a founding document of this country that restricts the government from being able to infringe upon that right. Now, the importance of the Second Amendment. Why did the Founding Fathers give us the Second Amendment? The Founding Fathers gave us the Second Amendment. It was not for hunting. It was not for self-defense against some robber, bank robber, or anything else. I mean, it was, but that was not the main reason for it. The main reason for the Second Amendment was because our Founding Fathers knew that the best way to keep some tyrannical dictatorship from taking over America, rather foreign or domestic, which means it doesn't matter if it was your own government or someone who got in government or whatever that controls the military, or some other military in some other part of the world coming here and wanting to enforce their will in America. Whoever it was, the best way to keep from one person being able to enforce their will upon America by force with a military was if every American had guns. They're like, now at any moment you can defend yourself against any government. Any government in the world, including your own government. Which is why it's written in the Declaration of Independence that once a government becomes destructive upon itself or its people, the people have the right to abolish or destroy that government. That is written in the Declaration of Independence. I encourage you to look it up and understand what that means. What it means is when your government steals majority of your hard-earned money through force and then gives it to other countries, often countries that are enemies of your country, and then sells them military hardware and everything else that they are destructive upon your country, upon your people, upon itself. A great example of that is when our military go to the Middle East to fight, they're often fighting against weapons that our enemies got from America. That is called being destructive upon itself. And they are stealing our tax money to do it. When this country was first founded, you had an option to pay taxes. What I mean by that is the only thing that was taxed was it was alcohol, tobacco, and I believe it was spices. Which means if you didn't want to pay taxes, you just didn't have to buy alcohol, tobacco, or spices. I think it was spice. I don't know. It might have been something else. Whatever it was. That's the point I'm trying to make is you had the option to pay taxes on that. Which means when you imported it and sold it, you pay taxes. You would pay a sales tax or a trade tax. And that's how the government funded itself. So you had the option, which means if suddenly George Washington decided that he was going to take all of the tax money and take it to Africa and start rounding up a bunch of slaves and women and children to make slaves and to traffic and to rape and everything else, you can go, well, I don't agree with that. So I'm not going to buy alcohol or tobacco or wheat or spices or whatever it was. Because I don't want mine to be a part of that. And the government couldn't do anything. That was it. Well, they were like, all right, well. Today, you don't have that option. Today, you go work, you're going to give 40%. I'm sorry, income taxes is probably close to 40. It's like 30 something. Generally is what you're going to pay. And then you start thinking about, okay, so I pay income tax at, let's just say, 33 to 35%. And then I'm paying permits, driver's license, tag renewals, fishing license, hunting license, sales tax. And then they force me to buy insurance, medical insurance, car insurance. And then, what else am I forgetting? If you go to a park that's supposed to be managed by the funds we give them, oh, well, we gotta pay to get in the park. Some places you have to buy a license to hike. What else we got? Sales tax on gas, cars, everything else. So it's just like, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, like it's just never ending. There's just no point that your money's not taxed. So in the real reality, you're probably taxed closer to 60%. If you add up everything the government forces you to buy, because it's like, well, I thought income tax was supposed to take care of all of that. How come income tax doesn't regulate fish and wildlife? How come income tax doesn't regulate the roads? Why am I paying sales tax on gasoline? Why do commercial vehicles have to pay expedited sales tax on diesel? Well, let's take care of the roads. Well, then what the hell is my income tax taking care of? Pakistan's gender studies program? Israel's Iron Dome? At what point does it take care of America? Say I digress. I keep getting off. I'm trying to stay on gun control. So they wrote the Second Amendment not to grant a right, to restrict the government's ability to infringe on the right. They gave it to us not to hunt, not for self-defense, but for the defense of our country against all militaries and all governments. Which means nobody was going to be able to come here with a military and put a gun to your head and tell you, you're going to do this. Like pay 40% in taxes out of your income. Because you would have the ability to defend yourself. They wouldn't have a monopoly on force. That's the whole goal of a free society, is making sure financial elite, bankers, big-time Fortune 500 CEOs, and federally elected politicians do not have a monopoly on power. Right now they do, because most of America is asleep. But they know if we ever decide to wake up and organize, it's over like that. It's literally lights out. And that's where gun control comes from. Nobody in a very powerful position, whether it's finance, politics, major manufacturing, you name it, nobody wants the body of the American people to be able to wake up like that and decide that their reign is over. They don't want us to wake up and be like, hey, you've created a monopoly on grocery stores. And now I don't have anywhere to get clean, healthy food from because you created a monopoly and ran out the free market. Because nobody could compete with you. And you used your money to market and fund politicians that would help regulate your competitors out of business. That's not free market. That's called a monopoly or corporatism, not capitalism. If you have a monopoly on a market, it is no longer a free market. And it's the same thing with force. You do not have free elections if the person getting elected has a monopoly on force. They need to know that, hey, the American people at any time can come take this away from me. But that's not how it is right now. They make you believe that they do have a monopoly on force because you are isolated and compartmentalized. If the federal government came to you right now, you could be neighbors for 10 years, have a beer together multiple times a week, and be really close with each other. And if the federal government came to your house right now and threatened you and said, you got to rat out your neighbor, we need to know everything about, you would do it in a heartbeat. And it's not your fault. You've been taught to be scared to death of the legal system, of courts, of judges, of law enforcement. You've been taught to be scared to death and that they have a monopoly on force. And that's what they want you to believe. But it's not enough for them. That charade could fall any day, any moment, with any event. It's gotten close sometimes. The charade got close to falling during COVID. Because there was a lot of people out there that wasn't going to allow it to go a step further than it already went. Martial law, lockdowns, curfews, forced masks, forcing people to not be able to go earn money. and the next step was wanting to force injections into your body, it could have been anything they wanted. Sure, okay, we believe that, hey, it was a vaccine that was supposed to help us. That's what most people believe. But it could have been cyanide. And there would have been nothing else you could have done. Everybody would have had the same reaction that they did to forced vaccines that could heal you. But they know there's something you could have done. And if that charade had fallen quickly like it was falling during COVID, that you could stand up, you could use your Second Amendment, and you could take their reign away from them. And that's why gun control is so important by some of the most powerful people in the entire world. Is because they don't want you to suddenly decide that you're going to take their reign away. I'm talking Rothschilds, Rockefeller, BlackRock, Vanguard. The Federal Reserve. We'll do an episode about that one, and we'll talk about the Federal Reserve and fractional banking. They can really understand how corrupt everything is. And you can understand why they don't want you to have a Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with self-defense. It has nothing to do with them not wanting you to be able to defend yourself. It has nothing to do with these crazies that run around and shoot up schools and everything else. It has nothing to do with that. They do not want you to have the ability to one day wake up and decide that their reign is over. They want that control. They want that ability. That is why the Second Amendment is under attack. For everybody who wants to know what the results of being a completely disarmed nation is, should look at any nation throughout history. There has never been an empire that you were allowed to be armed as the citizenry, as the peasants. If you really want to get into history, you were not even allowed to train. Roman Empire, what's the famous one everybody always, it was a Greek Empire. Spartan Empire, Greek Empire. Unless you were in the military, you were not even allowed to exercise and work out. It was considered hostile against the current emperor or king. Only when you were a soldier and military were you allowed to train and exercise and get strong, and also train with weapons and how to use weapons. If you ever did that outside, unless you were part of like the standing militia, they did have militias where they would call upon certain people. So it's like if you were considered part of that militia, so sometimes they would do it in the ways of like, okay, the oldest son of every family, the oldest, the father of every family, whatever it may be, and you were considered part of that militia, you were allowed to train. You were allowed to train with weapons. Sometimes they would let you keep weapons, and sometimes they would keep the weapons for you, but you were allowed to train. So it was different throughout empires, but generally, you just weren't allowed to have weapons. You weren't allowed to have arms. There was no self-defense. There was no training for self-defense. There were very few empires or countries throughout the world that even fractionally armed their citizens. America was a very, very unique situation when it was the idea that every citizen could be armed and was allowed to train and was allowed to defend themselves. So everybody always seems to think that it's some alien concept to live in a world without arms or guns. And the bottom line is it's not. It's every empire that's ever existed to date has disarmed their citizens. And look at the results of that. Look at the results of it today. There's a few countries, total gun bans out there. They have the worst gun crimes you can imagine. I will say one country that seems to do okay, it might be the UK. It's a European country. Generally, their gun crime is very low. Generally. When there is a gun crime, it usually is very bad, because not even the police are equipped to respond with it. But the violent crime rate of that country is absolutely shocking. It makes a lot of places dwarf a comparison. And I mean all of it. Like when I say violent crime, I mean rape, murder, robbings, getting maimed and disfigured and beat to death, and you name it. It is very, very ugly and hard to watch. Hang on a sec, I gotta check the TikTok. Somebody keeps flagging me for misinformation. I don't even know what I talked about tonight. That was misinformation on my TikTok. I don't even know. Trying to kill me on TikTok. Of course, anytime you talk about something controversial, people want to come on there and try to shut you down any way they can. But anyways, in wrap up. So plenty of experiments out there. You can look throughout history. Gun control has been experimented in almost every empire. We are the first empire where it was unlimited freedom in arming yourself and training that is being tested. And it was the idea that you didn't end up in situations like Julius Caesar and Mao Zedong and Stalin and Hitler. It was the idea that a people had a means to defend themselves, not against criminals, but against conquerors. And the people in America that scream for gun control the loudest are often working for one of those conquerors, because they know that they've created a monopoly system on a market, on force, on whatever it is. And the idea of you being able to one day call that charade of like, hey, this is a monopoly, this is not fair, and you are being authoritative and dictating your will upon people in the market. And we are taking that away from you. They don't want that to happen. The only way that could happen is if people called their charade, stood up. It's called a velvet revolution. If the threat of violence isn't on the table, it is not a deterrent. The Second Amendment was meant to be a deterrent. And it has been, and it was. Why do you think in World War II they bombed Hawaii? Look on Google Maps where Hawaii is. Nobody has ever invaded the heartland, the mainland of the United States, outside of the Revolutionary War and King George III doing what he did during 1776, the Revolutionary War in 1812, when they came back. They had a handful of boots on the ground. But outside of that, there's never been an invading force in America. Why is that? Well, I think that Mao Zedong said it the best. Or maybe it was the Emperor of Japan when they bombed Pearl Harbor. I don't remember who it was. I thought it was Mao Zedong. You guys can call me on that if I'm wrong. But he said you could never invade the heartland of America. And the person interviewing was like, why? They're like, because there would be a rifle behind every blade of grass. That is the deterrent our founding fathers wanted with the Second Amendment. They also wanted the deterrent to be like, hey, if you are some person who wants to grow up and be a king and conquer America and be a dictator or king or whatever it is, well, you have to convince an entire population of people that have rifles. It was a deterrent, but it is only a deterrent if it's on the table. What does that mean if it's on the table? Well, it means that you are willing to do it. A great example is the nuclear standoff. For those of you who don't know, there are however many countries that have entered what's considered the nuclear standoff, which is the mutually assured destruction of every nation with nuclear arms, most likely just the entire world, which means we have entered a treaty, a truce, that nobody will use their nuclear arms, because if one person uses them, then everybody will use them, which is most countries with nuclear arms getting hit with nuclear warheads. It would destroy all of those countries and most likely most of the world. So that's called a standoff. So we have entered a standoff, a nuclear standoff. But it is only a deterrent, which means Russia will never use nuclear arms against us because they know we are willing to use them against them. And so we're at a standoff. And that is what it means to be a deterrent. That is why your founding fathers gave you the right to bear arms. To deter other countries, which it has in the past. To deter criminals from wanting to attack you, rob you, steal from you. To deter giant banks and corporations and everybody else from wanting to create a monopoly on the market or on force. To deter some chauvinistic royal family bloodline who decides they want to conquer America. That is the heart of the Second Amendment. Remember, it's not a right. That document doesn't grant you a right. It just restricts the government from being able to infringe on that right. It was a directive to the government, not a directive to us, the people. And that is the heart of the Second Amendment. That is the heart of the gun control debate. Now, they will tell you that it's 100% like, oh, it's about safety. It's about being able to walk down the street. It's about this. It's about that. And the greatest tyrannies on the planet are always done under the most noble of causes. And for everybody who wants to, I'm going to end on this right here. For everybody that wants to say, well, it should be considered. Because I agree with you. Like, we always have to consider what level of safety and security we want. And what sacrifice and loss and price we're willing to pay. If we took every measure to prevent every unnatural death, we'd all be living in padded rooms with straitjackets, being fed through plastic tubes. So the problem with security is how far you can go without destroying from within what you're trying to protect from without. I'll say it one more time. The problem with security, with safety, is how far you can go without destroying from within what you're trying to protect from without. An example of that is you don't want anybody dying from dirty drinking water. So you remove all the water from your community, and then everybody just dies of thirst. So guys, I appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to me. I know we were kind of all over the place today. I will be back tomorrow. Hopefully I'm definitely going to advertise it tomorrow. I'm going to have a little bit of a plan set together. We're probably going to dive into the current things going on, like when it comes to the response that's been happening since we've seen the situation with Erna and the situation with Charlie and, Pam Bondi going as loony toony as the left and calling for, the federal government to enact force on anybody that they deem as hate speech. I think we got a taste of that with the Biden era and the Obama era and others, and I think that, we obviously got to be real careful with that. It's my dog. So, again, appreciate you guys being here with me. We look forward to talking with you tomorrow. And be sure you are liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, Talking Rife. We appreciate you guys.